My wife's lover, a cop, raided my house with his SWAT team. I'm taking your medals, your honor, your wife, and your precious little daughter, soldier. My wife spat on my uniform. He's a washed-up coward. His SWAT team tried to put me in cuffs. They had no idea who I really was. I'm taking everything, soldier, he said. Then I made one call. The alarm doesn't wake me because I'm already staring at the ceiling when it goes off at 5:47 a.m. Another sleepless night in what's becoming a pattern I don't like. Pine Ridge, Colorado sits at 8,200 feet, which means the air's thin and the bullshit's supposed to be thinner, but lately I'm drowning in both. I roll out of bed like I have for the past 23 years. Feet hit the floor, spine straight, ready for whatever fresh hell the day's serving up. I'm Logan Mercer, 45 years old, and I've got more moving parts in my life than a Swiss watch factory. Most folks around here see a guy who moved up from the city, trades his Tom Ford suits for flannel on weekends, and makes a mean scrambled egg. What they don't see is the equity portfolio that could fund a small country's infrastructure. The board meetings I chair from my home office while wearing pajama pants below the camera line, or the fact that my simple mountain life includes a Tesla Model S Plaid sitting in the garage that I drive maybe twice a month because I prefer to think while walking these mountain trails. Mercer Risk and Capital isn't your typical consultancy. Half of its security work, corporate risk assessment, compliance overhauls, the occasional hostile takeover defense when some private equity vultures circle a wounded company. The other half is family office operations, managing my own assets and a small but profitable venture portfolio that includes 3 SaaS companies, 2 AI startups, and a legal tech firm that's about to close its Series B funding round. Forbes hasn't put me on their billionaire list yet, but give it time. The track record speaks for itself. I pad downstairs in bare feet. The marble floors of our mountain estate cold enough to wake the dead. Yeah, marble floors. In Colorado. Sabrina insisted on them when we built this place 3 years ago, said they reminded her of her grandmother's place in the Hamptons. I thought it was ridiculous then. Now I'm wondering if it was just the first sign I missed of how far apart we were drifting. The kitchen's my sanctuary. Stainless steel appliances that could outfit a restaurant, granite countertops that probably cost more than most people's cars, and a view of the Continental Divide that still takes my breath away on clear mornings like this. I crack 6 eggs into a bowl, old habits from my special operations days when you never knew when your next meal was coming. Add some cream, a splash of hot sauce, and start whisking while the butter melts in the pan. Morning, Dad. Aria shuffles in at 6:15, paint still under her fingernails from whatever masterpiece she was working on until God knows what hour. My daughter's 17, whip-smart, and has more artistic talent in her pinky finger than I have in my entire body. She's also the only person in this house who still looks at me like I'm worth a damn. Morning, kiddo. Coffee. I pour her a mug, black, no sugar, because she's got more sophisticated taste than most adults I know. She nods and settles onto one of the leather bar stools, pulling out her phone to scroll through whatever 17-year-olds scroll through these days. Probably TikTok videos about cryptocurrency or sustainable investing. Kids today are sharper about money than we were at their age. Mom's already gone. Aria mentions without looking up. Said something about an early shift at the hospital. I check my watch. 6:17 a.m. Sabrina's a nurse at Pine Ridge General. And yeah, they do early shifts. But since when does a 7 a.m. shift require leaving the house at 6 a.m. for a 12-minute drive? I file that thought away in the part of my brain that still runs threat assessments on everything, even when I don't want to. Book club tonight. Aria continues, making air quotes. With Jessica and the gang. Right. Book club. Every Tuesday for the past 6 months. Funny how book club always seems to involve designer dresses and perfume that costs more per ounce than good whiskey. But hey, maybe they're reading 50 Shades of Private Equity or something equally stimulating. Sabrina breezes through the kitchen at 6:22 in a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, her phone buzzing like an angry wasp. Hospital shift, she announces to no one in particular. Then book club, and there's that donor brunch Sunday at the country club. She doesn't make eye contact when she says it, just grabs her coffee and disappears back upstairs. I serve Aria her eggs and lean against the counter with my own plate. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I can see the sun starting to paint the peaks pink and gold. It's beautiful enough to be on a postcard, but beauty doesn't fix what's broken inside these walls. My phone buzzes with a text from Bryce Navarro, my old teammate who's now a partner at Hart and Navarro LLP, one of Denver's most prestigious law firms. Client call at noon. CFO wants compliance overhaul and incident response plan. Sounds like you're kind of fun. I text back, send me the brief. And thanks for the referral. This is how it works in my world. You build relationships, you deliver results, and the work finds you. The CFO probably heard about my work through the grapevine. Maybe the restructuring I led last year that saved 1,200 jobs and generated a 40% return for shareholders. Or the hostile takeover defense I orchestrated that turned a predatory acquisition into a strategic partnership worth $2 billion in combined revenue. People think running a consultancy is boring. They're wrong. Every day brings a new puzzle. How do you protect a company's assets during a federal investigation? What's the best way to structure a series of funding round to maintain founder control? How do you implement AI-driven compliance monitoring without triggering regulatory red flags? It's chess played at light speed with real money and real consequences. By 11:30, I'm showered, shaved, and wearing a Tom Ford Navy suit that cost more than some people's cars. The fabric feels like liquid mercury, and it fits like it was made for my body, which it was. Image matters in my business. When you're advising Fortune 500 CEOs and venture capitalists with 9-figure portfolios, you don't show up looking like you just rolled out of a Marriott courtyard. The client call goes smoothly. The CFO's dealing with potential securities fraud issues. Nothing criminal, just some sloppy documentation that could trigger an SEC investigation. I outline a 3-phase compliance overhaul: immediate document preservation, revised internal controls, and ongoing monitoring through our legal tech platform. Total engagement value, 7 figures. Another day, another dollar. After the call, I pour myself 2 fingers of Macallan 25-year-old and settle into my home office to review some contracts. The whiskey costs $400 a bottle, and it's worth every penny. Smooth as silk, complex as a Supreme Court opinion, and strong enough to remind you that quality costs money but cheap costs more. My office overlooks the valley, all floor-to-ceiling windows and clean lines. The furniture's minimalist, a glass desk, leather chair, and built-in bookshelves lined with everything from Sun Tzu's Art of War to the latest Harvard Business Review. On the credenza, there's a photo of me and Aria at her law school graduation last year. Yeah, my 17-year-old daughter graduated law school. She's that brilliant. Tested out of high school at 15, blew through undergrad in 2 years, and finished her JD at Denver Law, while most kids her age were figuring out how to do their own laundry. The afternoon brings more calls. A private equity firm in New York wants my opinion on a potential acquisition in the cybersecurity space. A Silicon Valley startup needs help structuring their Series B to avoid diluting founder equity. A Fortune 100 company wants to discuss their compliance posture ahead of going public. Each conversation represents millions in potential revenue, and I handle them all from my home office in the mountains while wearing hiking boots under my desk. But here's the thing about success. It's lonely when the people closest to you stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a bank account. Sabrina used to ask about my work, used to care about the deals I was closing and the companies I was building. Now she just sees the lifestyle, the Upper West Side penthouse we kept as an investment property, the private jet I charter for client meetings, the Swiss bank accounts and offshore trusts that keep our assets diversified across multiple jurisdictions. Marriage doesn't run on spreadsheets and profit margins. It runs on presence, on giving a damn about the small stuff, on showing up when it matters. And lately, I'm batting about .200 in that department, which in baseball gets you sent back to the minors and in marriage gets you served with divorce papers. At dinner, Aria tells us about her latest painting, something about resilience and recovery that she's entering in a regional competition. Sabrina nods and makes the right noises, but her phone keeps buzzing and her eyes keep drifting to the screen. I put my phone face down on the table and give Aria my full attention, because that's what fathers do. Think you'll win? I ask. She shrugs, but I can see the hope in her eyes. Maybe. The theme is overcoming adversity, and I think I've got something to say about that. Yeah, kid. We all do. After dinner, Sabrina disappears to get ready for book club. I help Aria with her college applications. She's applying to art programs even though she could probably run circles around most MBA students. The kid wants to paint, so she's going to paint. I've got enough money to support whatever dreams she wants to chase. Around 8 p.m., Sabrina comes downstairs wearing a black cocktail dress that definitely wasn't purchased for reading novels with the girls. Her perfume fills the room, something French and expensive that I don't recognize. She kisses my cheek without really touching me and tells me not to wait up. I watch her drive away in her BMW X5, and something in my gut clenches like a fist. 23 years of marriage, and I can read the signs. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she flinches when I touch her. The phone calls that end abruptly when I walk into the room. The credit card charges for restaurants I've never been to and hotels and cities she's never mentioned visiting. But suspicion isn't evidence, and evidence isn't proof. I learned that in the military, refined it in business, and I'm about to apply it to my marriage. Because if there's one thing Logan Mercer doesn't do, it's make moves based on feelings instead of facts. I pour another whiskey and settle into my chair. Outside, the mountains hold up the sky like ancient pillars, and the silence stretches on forever. Tomorrow, I think, I'm going to start paying attention to details that matter. Not market fluctuations, or compliance reports, or board meeting prep. The details that could blow up my life. In the military, they teach you that paranoia is just another word for situational awareness. Civilians think it's unhealthy to notice everything, catalog every detail, track every inconsistency. But when you've spent 15 years in places where missing a detail meant coming home in a box, attention to detail becomes second nature. And right now, every detail in my life is screaming that something's wrong. I wake up at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday and immediately notice Sabrina's side of the bed is perfectly made. Not slept in and then made. Just made. Like she never came to bed at all. Book club must have run really, really late. I check my phone. No missed calls, no texts. If my wife was in an accident or had some emergency, I'd be the last to know. That thought sits in my stomach like a chunk of undigested steel. Coffee first, then reconnaissance. That's how we did it in Kandahar, and that's how I'm doing it in Pine Ridge. I brew a pot of the good stuff, single-origin Colombian that costs more per pound than most people spend on groceries in a week. And settle into my home office with my laptop and a legal pad. Time to build what we use to call a pattern of life analysis. Sabrina's story, volunteer shift at the hospital, then book club at Jessica Morrison's house on Elm Street. Simple enough to verify. I pull up the hospital's staff scheduling system. Yeah, I have access because I helped them upgrade their cybersecurity software last year, and they made me an honorary board member. Sabrina wasn't scheduled for any shifts yesterday. Not volunteer, not paid, not anything. Strike one. Next, I check our joint credit card account. The statement reads like a forensic accountant's nightmare. There's a charge for $48,000 at something called Grand Meridian Ballroom in downtown Denver. $48,000. For a book club meeting? Unless they're discussing the leather-bound first edition of Gutenberg's Bible while eating caviar off Fabergé eggs, that doesn't add up. The charge is dated 3 weeks ago, right around the time Sabrina mentioned needing new dresses for charity events. I cross-referenced the Grand Meridian Ballroom's website. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, designer event coordination. The kind of place where Fortune 500 companies host their annual shareholder meetings and where billionaires throw wedding receptions for their third wives. Not exactly the local library's book discussion venue. Strike two. I walk upstairs to our bedroom safe. A custom installation that cost more than most people's cars and requires both biometric and numeric access. Inside, all our important documents are stored in acid-free folders with military precision. Contracts, insurance policies, investment statements, and yes, our prenuptial agreement. Everything's there, but the prenup folder is sitting about 2 millimeters to the left of where it should be. Most people wouldn't notice. But I spent years in places where noticing 2 millimeters could save your life. Someone's been reading our prenup. Someone who has access to the safe, knows the combination, and was careful enough to almost put it back exactly where it belonged. The prenup is ironclad. I made sure of that when we signed it 8 years ago, right before I started making serious money. Separate property remains separate, joint property gets split according to contribution, and infidelity triggers a morals clause that would leave the cheating party with about enough assets to afford a studio apartment in Omaha. Strike 3, and the batter's walking back to the dugout. But Logan Mercer doesn't make accusations based on circumstantial evidence. I learned that lesson in law school before I decided the military was a better fit for my skill set. You build a case brick by brick, fact by fact, until the wall of evidence is so solid that denial becomes impossible. I need more data. Around 2 p.m., I drive into town for errands. Pine Ridge is small enough that everyone knows everyone, which makes it either the best place or the worst place to have an affair, depending on how smart you are about it. I stop at Morrison's Market first, family-owned grocery store where Jessica Morrison's husband Dave works as the general manager. "Hey, Dave," I say, grabbing a basket. "Sabrina mentioned book club was great last night. Hope the ladies didn't keep Jessica up too late." Dave looks confused. "Book club?" Jessica was home with me watching Netflix. Some true crime documentary about financial fraud. You know how she gets about white-collar criminals after that whole Enron thing. My blood turns to ice water, but I keep my expression neutral. Oh, maybe I got the night wrong. These hospital shifts have Sabrina's schedule all mixed up. Yeah, those nurses work crazy hours. Dave agrees, completely oblivious to the fact that he just handed me a smoking gun. I finish my shopping, picked up some ingredients for dinner that I probably won't have the appetite to cook, and drive to Pine Ridge General Hospital. The parking lot is familiar territory. I've been here dozens of times for charity events, board meetings, and the occasional emergency room visit when Aria decided to test the limits of gravity during her rock climbing phase. I spot Nurse Patricia Williams coming out of the main entrance. Patricia's been at Pine Ridge General for 20 years and knows every schedule, every shift change, every gossip-worthy scandal within a 50-mile radius. "Logan," she calls out, walking over to my Tesla. "How's Sabrina doing? We've missed her at the volunteer coordinator meetings." "Missed her? Well, she resigned from the volunteer program about 6 months ago. Said she was too busy with other commitments. I just assumed it was your business expanding or maybe Aria needing more support with college applications." 6 months. Sabrina's been lying about volunteer shifts for 6 months, and I've been too buried in board meetings and Series B funding rounds to notice. Some risk assessment expert I am. "Right, of course," I say, forcing a smile. "Thanks for asking about her." Patricia nods and heads toward her car. I sit in the Tesla for 5 minutes, letting the information settle. No volunteer shifts. No book club. A $48,000 venue charge. Someone reading our prenup. The picture's getting clearer, and I don't like what I'm seeing. That evening, I cooked dinner for Aria and me, pan-seared salmon with asparagus and wild rice. Sabrina texts around 6 p.m. saying she's working late and we shouldn't wait for her. I don't bother asking where she's working, since the hospital clearly isn't expecting her. "Dad, you okay?" Aria asks, poking at her salmon. "You seem distracted." I look at my daughter, brilliant, beautiful, and completely unaware that her family is about to implode. She's got college applications to finish, art competitions to win, and a future to build. The last thing she needs is her father's marriage crisis derailing her senior year. "Just work stuff," I lie. "Some compliance issues with one of our portfolio companies. Nothing that won't sort itself out." She nods and changes the subject to her latest painting. I listen and ask the right questions, but part of my mind is already working on the next phase of my investigation. Because if there's one thing my military training taught me, it's that hope is not a strategy. Neither is wishful thinking. After dinner, I pour myself a Macallan 25 and settle into my office. Time to call in some professional help. I scroll through my contacts until I find the number for Marcus Chun, a private investigator who used to work corporate espionage before going freelance. Marcus specializes in matrimonial investigations for high-net-worth individuals. The kind of discreet, thorough work that holds up in court and doesn't end up on the front page of the Denver Post. "Marcus, it's Logan Mercer. I need your services. Personal or professional?" "Personal. Very personal. And I need it done quietly." "Understood. The usual rate applies, $5,000 a day plus expenses. Full documentation, admissible evidence, comprehensive report. Money's not an issue. How soon can you start?" "Tomorrow morning. I'll need some basic information, schedules, routines, vehicle descriptions, known associates." I give him everything I know, which feels like pathetically little for a man who's supposed to be an expert at risk assessment. But sometimes you're too close to the situation to see it clearly. That's why publicly traded companies hire external auditors instead of just trusting their own CFOs. After I hang up, I sit in my office staring out at the mountains. Somewhere out there, my wife is probably with another man, spending money we earned together, planning God knows what kind of future that doesn't include me. The irony isn't lost on me. I've spent my entire career protecting other people's assets, and I didn't see the hostile takeover of my own marriage until it was already in progress. My phone buzzes with a text from Bryce. "How'd the compliance call go today?" I text back, "Fine. May need your services soon for a different kind of legal matter." "Business or personal?" "Personal. I'll call you tomorrow." "Roger that. Whatever you need, brother." That's the thing about military friendships. They don't fade with time or distance. Bryce has my back whether we're dealing with a complex acquisition or a messy divorce. And based on what I'm uncovering, it's looking more like the latter with each passing hour. I finish my whiskey and head upstairs. Sabrina's still not home, and her side of the bed is going to stay empty tonight. Again, I lie in the dark, staring at the ceiling, while my mind runs through scenarios and contingencies. Tomorrow, Marcus starts his investigation. Tomorrow, I start building a case. And tomorrow, I start protecting what matters most, my daughter's future and my own financial security. Because if Sabrina thinks she's going to play me for a fool and walk away with half of everything I've built, she's about to learn that Logan Mercer didn't become successful by being naive about other people's motives. Game on. Thursday night. Sabrina's getting ready for another hospital shift, this one apparently running until midnight because the ICU is short-staffed. She's applying makeup with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker, which is interesting because I've never known intensive care nursing to require contouring and false eyelashes. "Don't wait up," she says, checking her reflection one more time. She's wearing scrubs, but they're the expensive kind, designer cuts that actually flatter instead of looking like medical-grade potato sacks. Her perfume could fund a small startup Series A round. "I'll probably be working late anyway." I reply from the bed, not looking up from my laptop, where I'm reviewing Verdict IQ's latest machine learning compliance reports. Got a board meeting with the New York Investment Group tomorrow morning. Some private equity vultures circling one of our portfolio companies. She nods absently and grabs her purse. A Tom Ford clutch that costs more than most people's monthly rent. For a hospital shift. Right. I wait 15 minutes after she leaves, then get dressed. Black jeans, dark sweater, baseball cap pulled low. Not exactly special operations gear, but Pine Ridge isn't Kandahar, and I'm not infiltrating a terrorist compound. I'm just conducting surveillance on my wife, which somehow feels more dangerous. The Tesla's too conspicuous for this kind of work, so I take our backup vehicle, a black Ford F-150 that blends in with every other truck in Colorado. I've equipped it with some basic surveillance tech, dash cam, GPS tracker, encrypted communication system. Nothing illegal, just good business practices adapted for personal use. I follow at a safe distance, maintaining what we used to call loose surveillance, far enough back to avoid detection, close enough to maintain visual contact. Sabrina drives like she's got somewhere important to be, taking the highway toward downtown Denver instead of the local route to Pine Ridge General. She exits at 16th Street, which is nowhere near the hospital. This part of downtown is all trendy bars and upscale restaurants, the kind of places where Denver's young professionals go to see and be seen. She parks in front of Murphy's Tavern, a cop bar that's been serving whiskey and war stories since the 1970s. I find a spot across the street with clear sightlines and settle in to wait. Through Murphy's front window, I can see the usual crowd: off-duty cops, detectives, a few federal agents from the Denver field office. The kind of place where law enforcement unwinds after dealing with humanity's worst impulses all day. At 8:47 p.m., a polished Dodge Charger with police package modifications pulls into the spot next to Sabrina's BMW. The driver steps out, and I feel my blood pressure spike like a hostile takeover just went public. Detective Jace Rourke. 6'2", gym-sculpted physique, the kind of badge-heavy swagger that screams peaked in high school but found a way to extend adolescence indefinitely. I know him by reputation. Pine Ridge PD's golden boy, the detective who always gets the high-profile cases and the media interviews. Word around town is he's got political ambitions, maybe a run for sheriff when old Donovan Pike retires. He walks into Murphy's like he owns the place, and through the window, I watch him slide into a booth where my wife is waiting. They don't shake hands. They don't hug. They kiss like teenagers who just discovered hormones. I take photos. Lots of them. Timestamp, GPS coordinates, clear shots of faces and body language. In the corporate world, this is what we call evidence preservation. Chain of custody, admissible documentation, the kind of proof that holds up under cross-examination. They order drinks. Looks like whiskey for him, wine for her. She leans across the table and touches his badge like it's jewelry, laughing at something he's said. He taps the shield with his finger and grins, the kind of arrogant smirk that suggests he thinks he's untouchable. I'm documenting everything when my phone buzzes with an encrypted message from one of my AI monitoring systems. Verdict IQ's anomaly detection software has flagged something in the county evidence management database: irregular access patterns, suspicious data modifications, possible chain of custody violations. The system's designed to catch prosecutorial misconduct and police corruption, and it's triggering alerts on Detective Jace Rourke's case files. Interesting timing. I forward the alert to our compliance officer with instructions to run a full audit trail analysis. If Rourke's dirty in his professional life, that's information I can use. Corporate raiders always look for leverage points, and personal misconduct is excellent leverage. At 10:15, they leave the bar together. Rourke walks Sabrina to her car, pins her against the door, and kisses her like he's claiming territory. She responds with enthusiasm that I haven't seen directed at me in months. Then he gets in his Charger and follows her out of the parking lot. I follow them both, maintaining distance while my GPS tracker logs every turn. They drive to the Marriott downtown, not the budget-friendly one near the airport, but the luxury property where visiting Fortune 500 executives stay when they're in town for board meetings. Valet parking, marble lobby, the kind of place where rooms start at $400 a night and go up from there. I park across the street and watch them enter together. No luggage, no pretense of separate check-ins. Just a married woman and her cop boyfriend walking into a hotel like they own the place. I don't follow them inside. I've seen enough. The drive home takes 45 minutes, and I spend every minute of it thinking like a CEO facing a hostile takeover. What are my assets? What are my vulnerabilities? What's my exit strategy if this goes nuclear? Assets: ironclad prenuptial agreement, separate business entities protected by LLCs, offshore trusts that Sabrina can't touch, documentary evidence of her adultery. Plus whatever dirt Verdict IQ's AI systems dig up on Detective Golden Boy. Vulnerabilities: areas emotional well-being, potential media exposure that could hurt my business relationships, the fact that I still love my wife despite mounting evidence that she's been lying to me for months. Exit strategy: clean divorce, custody arrangement that protects Aria, asset protection that preserves our financial security. Treat it like any other corporate restructuring. Minimize damage, protect stakeholders, emerge stronger. At home, I pour myself a healthy measure of Macallan 25 and open my laptop. Time to document everything while it's fresh in my memory. Photos, timestamps, GPS coordinates, financial records. The kind of comprehensive evidence package that Bryce's law firm can use to build an airtight case. My phone rings at 11:30. Bryce's name on the caller ID. Working late. I answer. Always. Listen, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. About evidence preservation and marital misconduct. Yeah. If this is what I think it is, you need to be careful. Adultery's one thing, emotional betrayal, grounds for divorce, all that. But if the other party is law enforcement, there could be additional complications. Professional misconduct, abuse of power, potential criminal implications. I lean back in my chair and stare out at the mountains. What kind of complications? Depends on the specifics. If he's using his badge to intimidate witnesses, falsifying reports, taking bribes, that's federal territory. Public corruption, civil rights violations, the kind of stuff that brings in the FBI and makes headlines on CNBC. Hypothetically speaking. Right? Hypothetically. Bryce pauses. Logan, I've known you for 15 years. You don't do anything halfway. If you're building a case file, make sure you're prepared for whatever you find. Sometimes the cover-up is worse than the original crime. After he hangs up, I sit in my office and think about what he said. I started this investigation looking for proof of an affair. Now I'm potentially uncovering something bigger, a corrupt cop, a system of abuse, the kind of scandal that destroys careers and ruins lives. At 12:45 a.m., I hear Sabrina's BMW pull into our driveway. She comes upstairs quietly, assumes I'm asleep, and slips into our bathroom to shower. When she finally slides into bed next to me, she smells like hotel soap and guilt. "How was your shift?" I ask quietly. "Exhausting," she whispers. "Lost a patient. Tough night." I nod in the darkness and say nothing. Because what do you say when your wife lies to your face about spending the evening fucking a dirty cop in a downtown hotel room? When the woman you've loved for 23 years has become someone you don't recognize. You document it. You preserve the evidence. You treat your marriage like a failed acquisition and start planning the divestiture. Tomorrow, I'm calling Bryce. Time to get lawyers involved. Tonight, I'm going to lie here next to my wife and pretend I don't know she's been betraying everything we built together. Because sometimes the hardest part of any mission isn't the action, it's the waiting. It's 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when my world explodes. I'm in my home office reviewing Verdict IQ's latest AI anomaly report. Our machine learning algorithms have been flagging irregular patterns in Pine Ridge County's evidence management system for weeks now. Suspicious data modifications, altered timestamps, case files that show signs of tampering. The kind of digital breadcrumbs that usually lead to prosecutorial misconduct or police corruption. I'm cross-referencing the anomalies with Detective Rourke's case history when the front door of my house disintegrates. Not knocked down, disintegrated. Like someone took a battering ram to it and followed up with explosive charges for good measure. Police. Search warrant. Everyone on the ground now. Black-clad figures flood my living room like a tactical nightmare come to life. SWAT team, full battle rattle, automatic weapons, and tactical gear that probably costs more than most people's annual salaries. They move with precision, but not the kind of precision I'm used to seeing from elite units. These guys are all aggression and theater, the kind of operators who mistake volume for competence. I count 12 men. Standard breach formation, but sloppy spacing. No one's securing the stairwell where Arya sleeps, which is either incompetent or intentional. The lead officer, stocky, crew cut, the kind of gym muscles that come from steroids and anger management issues, sweeps his weapon across my marble floors like he's conquering enemy territory. At the center of this tactical clusterfuck stands Detective Jace Rourke. He's not in SWAT gear. He's wearing jeans, a leather jacket, and a grin that could power downtown Denver. His service weapon hangs low on his hip, and his badge catches the light from my crystal chandelier like a disco ball. He surveys my living room. The Italian leather furniture, the original artwork, the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcase the Continental Divide, and his smile gets wider. Well, he says, voice carrying across the room like he's addressing shareholders at an annual meeting. Logan fucking Mercer, the Great War hero turned paper pusher. I'm standing behind my desk with my hands visible, running threat assessments like my life depends on it. Which it might. 12 weapons trained on me. No clear exits, daughter upstairs, and a corrupt cop who's apparently decided to make this personal. I have a 17-year-old daughter sleeping upstairs, I say calmly. Whatever this is about, she's not part of it. Oh, but she is, Rourke says, stepping closer. She's very much part of it. You see, Logan, I'm here to take everything that matters to you. Your reputation, your freedom, your precious little girl. That's when Sabrina steps through the wreckage of our front door. She's wearing the black cocktail dress from last week's book club, the one that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. Her heels click against the marble floors like gunshots, and she moves through the chaos like she owns it. Which, apparently, she does. She stops next to Rourke and surveys the scene. Me in my pajama pants and MIT sweatshirt, surrounded by tactical officers in my own home. Her expression isn't shocked or horrified. It's satisfied. Like watching a private equity acquisition finally close after months of negotiations. Hello, Logan, she says. Her voice is cold enough to freeze whiskey. I stare at my wife of 23 years and feel something break inside my chest. Not my heart. That broke weeks ago when I first suspected. This is something deeper. Trust, maybe. Or faith in my ability to read people I thought I knew. Rourke wraps his arm around Sabrina's waist like he's claiming ownership. I want you to look at them, soldier boy. Really look. Because I'm taking your medals, your honor, your wife, and your precious little daughter. Two of his officers move toward me with zip ties. Their spacing is terrible. Too close together, bad angles of fire, no coordination between movement and overwatch. These aren't elite operators. They're local cops playing dress-up with federal money and military surplus gear. He's nothing, Sabrina says, staring at my dress blue uniform hanging on the chair where I left it after last week's Veterans Day ceremony. A washed-up coward who hides behind spreadsheets and board meetings. She steps closer to my uniform and spits on it. Actually spits on the fabric that represents 15 years of service, 3 deployments, and more classified operations than I can legally discuss. You think you're so smart with your fancy suits and your private jets, she continues. Your offshore accounts and your venture capital deals. But you're just a middle-aged man playing soldier in a world that's moved on without you. I don't respond. I'm too busy running calculations. 12 officers, but only 8 with clear fields of fire. 2 covering the stairs, sloppy positioning that leaves blind spots. No one watching the rear exit through the kitchen. Most importantly, no one searched me for weapons or secured the panic room behind my office bookshelf where I keep emergency communications equipment. More critically, this isn't a legitimate search warrant execution. Real federal raids don't involve the target's cheating wife providing color commentary. This is personal, which means it's sloppy, which means it's survivable. My phone is in my desk drawer, 3 feet away. If I can reach it without getting shot, I can trigger Red Pine, the contingency protocol I developed after starting Mercer Risk and Capital. One button press sends encrypted alerts to Bryce Navarro at Hart and Navarro LLP, our CFO, the compliance officers at all our portfolio companies, and the boards of directors for every LLC in our corporate structure. Asset freezes, credit line locks, beneficiary notifications, and attorney privilege communications all execute automatically. More importantly, Red Pine forwards copies of all financial records, communication logs, and surveillance evidence to multiple secure servers in different jurisdictions. If something happens to me tonight, the truth about Detective Rourke and his corrupt operation gets preserved for posterity. Rourke steps closer, his cologne mixing with the smell of tactical gear and aggression. You know what I love about this, Logan? You built this whole empire. Your consultancy, your venture capital deals, your portfolio of tech startups, and I'm going to watch it all burn down around you. He leans in close enough that I can smell the whiskey on his breath. Your daughter's going to watch her daddy get arrested for securities fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. We've got evidence of offshore accounts, unreported income, fraudulent investor statements. The works. I almost laugh. Securities fraud? Tax evasion? My accounting practices are cleaner than a Swiss bank vault. Every transaction is documented, every disclosure filed, every regulatory requirement exceeded. The IRS loves me because I pay more in taxes than some small countries generate in GDP. But that's not the point. The point is theater. Public humiliation. Destroying my reputation and my relationship with Arya while Rourke and Sabrina ride off into the sunset with whatever assets they think they can steal. One phone call, I say quietly. Rourke raises an eyebrow. What? I'm entitled to one phone call. That's the law, even for whatever bullshit charges you're planning to fabricate. He laughs, the sound echoing off my vaulted ceilings. You think this is some cop show? You think you get to call your lawyer and make this all go away? I meet his eyes and smile. Not the polite smile I use in board meetings or the warm smile I say for Arya. This is the smile I learned in places that don't appear on maps, dealing with people who thought they held all the cards right up until they didn't. Detective Rourke, I say calmly, you're about to learn the difference between playing soldier and being one. You're about to discover what happens when you fuck with someone who has better intel, better resources, and friends in much higher places than yours. I nod toward the stairs where a shadow moves in the darkness. And you're about to explain to my daughter why you thought breaking into our home in the middle of the night was a smart career move. Arya appears at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, hair messy from sleep, eyes wide with confusion and fear. She takes in the scene. Armed men in our living room. Her stepmother standing with a stranger, me surrounded by weapons. Dad, Her voice is small and scared, and it breaks what's left of my heart. Rourke follows my gaze and grins. Don't worry, sweetheart. Your daddy's just going away for a while. But don't be sad. You'll have a new father figure soon enough. That's when I stop calculating angles and distances and start thinking about consequences. Because threatening my daughter isn't tactics. It's personal. And personal makes people stupid. One phone call, I repeat. That's all I need. Phone call. I say again, my voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from briefing generals and testifying before Senate subcommittees. Constitutional right. Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. Even corrupt cops have to follow the Constitution. Sometimes. Rourke's grin falters for maybe half a second, just long enough for me to see the doubt creep in behind his eyes. He's riding high on adrenaline, and whatever power trip convinced him this tactical theater was a good idea, but he's not completely stupid. Denying a suspect's right to legal counsel is the kind of mistake that gets cases thrown out and careers destroyed. Fine, he says, pulling out his phone. Call your fancy lawyer. Tell him to meet you at the county lockup, because that's where you're spending the next few years. I take the phone and dial from memory. Not Bryce Navarro's number, though he's the obvious choice. Not my CFO or our corporate counsel or any of the high-powered attorneys who handle Mercer Risk and Capital's legal affairs. Instead, I call a number I haven't dialed in 3 years, to someone who most people don't know exists. The phone rings twice before a familiar voice answers. Mercer. Evelyn. I say. Active raid. Detective Jace Rourke, Pine Ridge County. My daughter's on the stairs. There's a pause. Not hesitation, calculation. Evelyn Park doesn't hesitate about anything. She's been making life-or-death decisions since before most of these tactical cowboys learned to shave. Understood, she says. Do not resist. We're already moving. I hand the phone back to Rourke, who's looking less confident than he did 30 seconds ago. Who the fuck did you just call? A friend, I say. What I don't tell him is that Evelyn Park is currently the Assistant Director of the Public Integrity Task Force, a joint DHS-DOJ unit that investigates corruption in state and local law enforcement. We served together in places that officially don't exist, did things that never happened, and saved each other's lives more times than either of us likes to remember. More importantly, she's been tracking Detective Jace Rourke for the past 6 months. See, Verdict IQ's AI anomaly detection system doesn't just flag suspicious patterns in evidence databases for our clients. It also feeds data to federal law enforcement agencies that license our compliance software. When our machine learning algorithms started identifying systematic evidence tampering, falsified police reports, and suspicious financial transactions tied to Pine Ridge County law enforcement, that information got automatically forwarded to the appropriate federal authorities. The appropriate federal authority, in this case, being Evelyn's task force. Rourke struts over to where Sabrina is standing, wraps his arm around her waist, and leans close to my face. His cologne is cheap and aggressive, the olfactory equivalent of his personality. I hope your friend's got a good lawyer, he says, because I'm taking everything, soldier. Your business, your reputation, your family. When I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job managing a McDonald's. He turns to his tactical team and raises his voice. Gentlemen, let me introduce you to Logan Mercer, war hero turned white-collar criminal. He thinks his money and connections make him untouchable. The SWAT officers shift uncomfortably. A few of them exchange glances that suggest they're wondering why they're conducting a midnight raid on a guy whose biggest crime seems to be successful investing and an unfaithful wife. He's been running securities fraud through his venture capital fund. Rourke continues, warming to his theme. Falsifying investor reports, hiding assets in offshore accounts, evading taxes on millions in unreported income. Classic rich guy crimes. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. Because while he's busy monologuing like a Bond villain, 10 miles away a convoy of federal vehicles is screaming toward Pine Ridge with lights and sirens that could wake the dead. Sabrina steps closer to me, her heels clicking on the marble like a countdown timer. You never saw it coming, did you, Logan? All those years building your little empire, playing corporate games, thinking you were so much smarter than everyone else. She reaches out and straightens my MIT sweatshirt like she used to do when we were happy. The gesture is so familiar, so intimate, that it hurts worse than any physical blow. I've been planning this for 2 years, she continues. Ever since you started spending more time with your portfolio companies than your family. Ever since you chose board meetings over school plays, private jets over family dinners. So you decided to fuck a corrupt cop and steal my assets? I ask. Her face hardens. I decided to take back what should have been mine all along. The prenuptial protects your precious business empire, but it doesn't protect you from criminal charges. When you go to federal prison, I'll be area's legal guardian. And legal guardians control trust fund distributions for minor beneficiaries. Clever. Evil, but clever. If I'm incarcerated on federal charges, Sabrina would indeed have significant control over area's financial interests. The trust documents I set up to protect my daughter's inheritance have provisions for alternative guardianship scenarios, but navigating those while defending against criminal charges would be complicated and expensive. Too bad she doesn't understand how federal asset forfeiture works, or how comprehensive my contingency planning actually is. Rourke checks his watch, a fake Rolex that probably came from the evidence locker of some drug bust. Time's up, hero. Let's get you processed and booked. I want you in an orange jumpsuit before sunrise. That's when the night explodes with light. Floodlights ignite our driveway like a football stadium. The kind of illumination that burns through darkness and turns everything stark white and surgical. Through the shattered remains of my front door, I can see vehicles. Black SUVs, unmarked sedans, and what looks like an armored command vehicle with enough communication equipment to coordinate a small invasion. Red laser dots crawl across my walls like electronic insects, settling on the wrong targets. Not me. Not Arya. The dots find Rourke and his tactical team, painting them with targeting systems that make their surplus military gear look like Halloween costumes. What the fuck? Rourke starts to say. That's when Agent Helena Voss steps through my doorway. She moves like liquid mercury, smooth, inevitable, absolutely certain of her authority. No wasted motion, no unnecessary drama. Behind her, a team of federal agents in actual tactical gear takes positions with the kind of precision that makes Rourke's SWAT cowboys look like mall security guards. Detective Jace Rourke, she announces, her voice carrying across the room with clinical authority. You are under arrest for violation of federal civil rights statutes, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, obstruction of justice, and about 12 other felonies that my colleagues are still tallying up. She produces a set of federal zip ties, the serious kind, not the plastic restraints local cops use for weekend DUI checkpoints. Officers of the Pine Ridge County Sheriff's Department, you will drop your weapons immediately and assume prone positions on the floor. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. The SWAT officers look at each other, then at Rourke, then at the red dots dancing across their body armor. They're local cops who probably make 40 grand a year plus overtime. They didn't sign up to have a firefight with federal agents in some rich guy's living room over Detective Golden Boy's personal vendetta. One by one, they set down their weapons and assume the position. Rourke, however, is not going quietly. He reaches for his service weapon, which is exactly the kind of stupid decision that gets people shot by federal agents who don't have time for local politics and personal drama. I wouldn't, Agent Voss says calmly. We've been watching you for 6 months, Detective. We have recordings of your conversations, financial records of your bribery schemes, and video evidence of your extortion activities. Your choice right now is whether you get arrested with dignity or get arrested after being tasered into unconsciousness. Rourke's hand freezes halfway to his weapon. His face goes through several interesting color changes as the reality of his situation finally penetrates whatever fantasy he'd been living in. This is bullshit, he says, but his voice lacks conviction. You can't just. Actually, we can, Agent Voss interrupts. Federal jurisdiction, federal crimes, federal consequences. Your local badges don't mean shit when you're violating constitutional rights and running extortion schemes. She looks at me and nods slightly. Mr. Mercer, are you and your daughter unharmed? We're fine, I say. Thank you. Good. We'll need statements from both of you, but that can wait until tomorrow. Right now, we have some garbage to take out. Agent Voss moves through my living room like she's conducting a board meeting instead of arresting corrupt cops. No wasted motion, no unnecessary drama. Just efficient federal authority backed by the kind of firepower that makes local politics irrelevant. Behind her, A team of actual professionals secures the scene with precision that makes Rourke's tactical theater look like community college drama club. Detective Rourke, she continues, producing a thick folder that probably contains enough evidence to put him away until Aria's grandchildren graduate college. You have the right to remain silent, which frankly would be the smartest thing you've done in months. Rourke's face cycles through several interesting expressions: confusion, rage, disbelief, and finally the dawning horror of someone who just realized they've been playing checkers while their opponent was playing chess with pieces they didn't know existed. This is harassment, he sputters, but his voice sounds like a deflating balloon. I'm conducting a legitimate investigation into securities fraud and tax evasion. With a fraudulent search warrant, Agent Voss interrupts. Based on fabricated evidence, obtained through perjury and conspiracy. She flips open the folder and starts reading like she's delivering quarterly earnings to shareholders. Would you like me to go through the specific statutes you violated, or would you prefer the executive summary? She doesn't wait for an answer, which is probably why, since Rourke looks like he's about to have an aneurysm. Conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law. Wire fraud. Mail fraud. Falsifying federal documents. Obstruction of justice. Bribery. Extortion. She looks up from the folder and smiles with all the warmth of a corporate restructuring announcement. That's just the federal charges. The state charges are being prepared by the Colorado Attorney General's office as we speak. One of the SWAT officers, a younger guy who probably has kids at home and a mortgage he can't afford to lose, raises his head slightly from his prone position on my marble floor. Ma'am, we were told this was a legitimate federal operation. We had no knowledge of any. Officer Martinez, Agent Voss says, consulting what looks like detailed personnel files. 8 years on the force, clean record, 2 commendations for community service. You and your colleagues will be interviewed separately to determine your level of involvement. Cooperation will be noted and appreciated. She turns her attention back to Rourke, and her expression hardens like concrete setting in winter. You, however, are fucked 6 ways from Sunday. That's when Assistant U.S. Attorney Priya Shah enters through my shattered front door, carrying a tablet and wearing the kind of confident expression that comes from having an airtight case and unlimited federal resources to prosecute it. Detective Rourke, she announces, her voice carrying the authority of the U.S. Attorney's Office. I'm AUSA Shah, and I'll be handling your prosecution. Before we proceed, I thought you might like to see some of the evidence we've compiled. She turns on the 85-inch Samsung mounted on my living room wall, the one I use for client presentations and board meeting video conferences. The screen fills with what looks like surveillance footage from Murphy's Tavern, time-stamped and GPS coordinated. There's Rourke, clear as daylight, leaning across a booth table and accepting what appears to be an envelope from a known drug dealer. The audio is crystal clear thanks to the wire the dealer was wearing as part of his own plea agreement. That's from 3 weeks ago, AUSA Shah explains helpfully. Joey Marconi, mid-level cocaine distributor, agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's been recording your conversations for the past 4 months. The next clip shows Rourke in the evidence room at the Pine Ridge County Sheriff's Office, clearly tampering with sealed evidence bags while the official cameras were mysteriously malfunctioning. Too bad for him that Verdict IQ's AI systems had flagged the suspicious patterns and federal agents had installed their own surveillance equipment. Evidence tampering, Shah continues. 12 separate instances, all documented. Your victims include 3 people who are currently serving time based on evidence you fabricated. Sabrina is standing frozen next to where Rourke is now kneeling in zip ties, and her face has gone pale enough to match our marble countertops. I can practically see the wheels turning in her head as she realizes that her knight in corrupt armor is actually a liability that's about to destroy everything. The screen changes to show more footage, this time from the Marriott downtown. Rourke and Sabrina entering together, checking into a room that was apparently bugged by federal agents who had been tracking his movements for months. The audio quality is excellent. Jesus Christ, Jace, what if he finds out? Sabrina's voice fills my living room, tinny but clear. He won't find out, Rourke replies. And even if he does, what's he going to do about it? I've got badges, guns, and jurisdiction. He's got spreadsheets and board meetings. But his connections don't mean shit in Pine Ridge County. I own this town, baby. The sheriff, the judges, half the city council. Your husband's about to learn that money doesn't beat badges. Oh, the irony. It's so thick you could cut it with a subpoena. The footage continues, showing their detailed planning sessions. How they would fabricate evidence of securities fraud. How they would use criminal charges to bypass the prenuptial agreement and gain control of our assets. How they would frame me for crimes I didn't commit while positioning themselves to benefit financially from my downfall. Arya has come halfway down the stairs, still in her pajamas, watching her stepmother's betrayal play out on our home theater system like the world's worst Netflix series. Her face is a mixture of hurt and disgust that breaks what's left of my heart. "Did you love him?" she asks quietly, her voice cutting through the federal agents and legal proceedings like a knife through silk. Sabrina turns to look at her, and for a moment I see something that might be shame cross her features. But it passes quickly, replaced by the cold calculation that apparently drove this entire scheme. "Love doesn't pay for private schools and country club memberships," she says. "Love doesn't secure trust fund distributions or portfolio dividends." Arya flinches like she's been slapped. "So this was all about money?" "This was about survival," Sabrina snaps. "Your father built an empire and forgot he had a family. I decided to take back what should have been ours." "Ours?" Arya's voice rises with teenage indignation. "You mean yours? I never asked for any of this. I never wanted Dad to choose between his business and his family." She looks at me with eyes that are too old for 17. But I sure as hell didn't want a stepmother who would destroy everything to steal what she thought she deserved. Agent Voss checks her watch, a government-issue Timex that probably costs less than Rourke's fake Rolex, but actually tells accurate time. "AUSA Shah, are we ready to transport the suspects?" "Almost," Shah replies, scrolling through more evidence on her tablet. "Detective Rourke, we also have your financial records. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, cryptocurrency transactions that correspond with your bribery schedule, and some interesting real estate purchases that far exceed your official salary." She shows him the screen, which displays what looks like a comprehensive forensic accounting report. Homeland Security's Financial Crimes Unit is very thorough. They've been tracking your money for months. Rourke is sweating now, which is impressive considering my house is climate-controlled to a steady 72 degrees. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," Shah assures him. "A public defender, since your assets are about to be seized under federal forfeiture statutes. Unless you've got some money hidden somewhere that we haven't found yet." The look on his face suggests they've found everything. "Mrs. Mercer." Agent Voss turns to Sabrina, who has been edging toward what used to be our front door. "You're also under arrest. Conspiracy charges, primarily, but we're still reviewing your level of involvement in the evidence tampering and bribery schemes." "I never." Sabrina starts to protest. "You coordinated meetings, provided intelligence about your husband's business activities, and helped plan the fabrication of federal charges," Voss interrupts. "That's conspiracy. It's also going to be very expensive to defend against. As federal agents escort my wife and her boyfriend out of our house in zip ties, I pour myself 3 fingers of Macallan 25 and settle into my leather chair. The whiskey burns just enough to remind me I'm still alive, still breathing, still standing in a house that finally feels like home again. Sheriff Donovan Pike appears in my doorway, hat in his hands, looking like a man who just watched his department get eviscerated by federal agents. "Logan," he says quietly, "I had no idea. If I had known what Rourke was doing, you would have stopped it," I finish. "I know, Donovan. This isn't on you." He nods gratefully, then looks around at the controlled chaos of a federal crime scene in my living room. "Anything you need from me, just ask. We're going to clean house from top to bottom. This kind of corruption stops now." Through my shattered front door, I can see news vans starting to gather. Pine Ridge is about to become very famous for all the wrong reasons, and I'm going to be at the center of the media circus whether I like it or not. But for the first time in months, I'm not worried about the future. Because sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and I just played the kind of strategic game that would make Sun Tzu proud. By 6 a.m., Pine Ridge looks like the aftermath of a corporate merger gone wrong. Federal vehicles are still parked in my driveway, news vans are gathering like vultures on Main Street, and my phone is blowing up with calls from reporters, clients, and board members who've seen Detective Golden Boy's arrest trending on Twitter. I don't answer the phone. Instead, I make coffee, scramble eggs for Arya, and watch CNBC cover the story with the kind of breathless excitement usually reserved for Fortune 500 bankruptcy filings. Federal corruption investigation rocks small Colorado town. The anchor announces over footage of Rourke being led away in handcuffs. Detective Jace Rourke, once considered a rising star in local law enforcement, has been arrested on charges of racketeering, bribery, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. They cut to file footage of me from last year's TechCrunch conference, where I spoke about AI applications in legal compliance. The cheer-in reads, Logan Mercer, venture capitalist targeted by corrupt cop. Aria looks up from her organic steel-cut oats. Dad, are you going to be okay? I reach across our granite breakfast counter and squeeze her hand. We're going to be better than okay, kiddo. We're going to be free. At 8 a.m. sharp, I conference call with Hart and Navarro LLP. Bryce Navarro is on the line from his corner office in downtown Denver, along with 3 other partners who specialize in family law, corporate litigation, and white-collar defense. These are attorneys who bill $800 an hour and earn every penny. Logan, Bryce says, I've been monitoring the federal case since 3 a.m. This is bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Rourke's been running a criminal enterprise for at least 2 years. The feds have evidence of bribery, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and conspiracy charges that could put him away for 30 years. Your wife appears to be a co-conspirator, not just an adulteress. The family law partner, Rebecca Chun, joins the conversation. Logan, we need to move fast on asset protection and custody issues. Sabrina's arrest creates a window of opportunity that won't stay open long. Within an hour, Hart and Navarro has filed an emergency motion for exclusive custody of Aria, citing Sabrina's involvement in federal criminal activity and her demonstrated unfitness as a guardian. They've also executed our prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, which triggers immediate asset separation and removes Sabrina from all financial accounts. My CFO, Marcus Webb, handles the corporate side with the efficiency of a private equity liquidation. By noon, he's revoked Sabrina's signatory authority on all business accounts, removed her as a beneficiary from our corporate life insurance policies, and triggered the key man clauses in our operating agreements that wall her off from any control or profit sharing in our ventures. Clean cut, Marcus reports from his office in our Denver headquarters. She's financially isolated from all business operations. The prenup protects everything: the venture portfolio, the real estate holdings, the offshore trusts, even the Tesla. The irony is delicious. Sabrina thought she was executing a sophisticated scheme to steal my assets and frame me for crimes I didn't commit. Instead, her criminal conspiracy has triggered every protection mechanism I've spent years putting in place. By 2 p.m., I'm conducting an emergency board meeting for our family investment LLC via encrypted video conference. Board members include Marcus, Bryce, 2 independent directors from our portfolio companies, and Aria, who owns a minority stake as part of her inheritance planning. Given recent events, I announced to the assembled faces on my home office monitors, I'm recommending immediate implementation of our crisis management protocols. We vote to execute a corporate restructuring that consolidates all assets under entities where Sabrina has no legal standing. We approve a white knight acquisition of a small cybersecurity firm that was being targeted by hostile buyers who smelled weakness after the scandal broke. Most satisfying, we greenlight a defensive acquisition of our main competitor in the legal tech space, a private equity-backed company that tried to poach our clients when news of my legal troubles first leaked. Hostile takeover defense at its finest, comments board member Dr. Sarah Kim, who runs one of our AI portfolio companies. Turn your enemy's aggression into acquisition opportunities. The crown jewel of our crisis response is Verdict IQ's Series B funding round. What started as a routine expansion has turned into a feeding frenzy now that federal prosecutors are publicly praising our AI compliance software for helping break up a corruption ring. 3 Silicon Valley venture capital firms are competing to lead the round, and the valuation has jumped 40% since yesterday's arrest footage went viral. Nothing attracts investment capital quite like proven results in high-stakes federal investigations. We've got term sheets from Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, and Founders Fund, reports Verdict IQ's CEO, Jennifer Park. They're all offering valuations north of $200 million, with minimal dilution and board control provisions that favor management. I review the terms on my tablet while sipping Macallan 25 from a crystal tumbler that costs more than most people's car payments. The whiskey tastes like victory, complex, satisfying, with just enough burn to remind you that good things come with a price. Late afternoon brings the personal satisfaction I've been waiting for. Sheriff Donovan Pike arrives at my house driving his personal Ford F-150, not an official vehicle. He looks like he's aged 5 years in the past 24 hours. "Logan," he says, hat in hand like he's visiting a funeral home. "I came to apologize and to ask for your help." We sit on my back deck overlooking the Continental Divide, sharing a bottle of beer and watching the federal crime scene techs finish processing Rourke's seized vehicles. "I've been sheriff for 15 years, Pike says. "I thought I knew my people. Turns out I didn't know shit." "How deep does it go?" I ask. "We're not sure yet. The feds are auditing every case Rourke touched, every arrest he made, every piece of evidence he processed. Could be dozens of convictions that get overturned. Could be innocent people sitting in prison because of his lies." Pike takes a long pull from his beer and stares at the mountains. "I need someone I can trust to help me clean house, design new procedures, implement oversight systems, make sure this never happens again." I consider his offer. On one hand, I've got plenty of business to handle, board meetings to conduct, acquisitions to manage, federal investigators who want statements about Rourke's criminal activities. On the other hand, this is my community, and communities need good governance to function. "I'll do it," I say, but with conditions. Any corruption investigations go directly to federal authorities, bypassing your office completely. No local politics, no good old boy protection, no second chances for dirty cops. Pike nods without hesitation. "Done. What else?" "Full transparency. Every arrest, every evidence transfer, every interaction with federal agencies gets documented and audited by independent compliance officers. You want my help? You get my standards." We shake hands as the sun sets behind the peaks, painting the sky the color of good whiskey. That evening, Aria and I order pizza and eat it on paper plates in our living room, surrounded by the controlled chaos of federal investigators packing up their equipment. The front door is still destroyed, the marble floors are scuffed with boot prints, and there's crime scene tape across half the house. But it feels like home again, like the poison has been drained out, and we can finally breathe clean air. "What happens to Mom?" Aria asks, picking pepperoni off her slice. "She'll probably make a plea deal," I say honestly. "Cooperate with the federal investigation in exchange for reduced charges. Maybe house arrest instead of federal prison." Aria nods thoughtfully. At 17, she's smart enough to understand that actions have consequences, even for people you love. "Are you sad?" she asks. I consider the question while looking around our damaged but liberated living room. "I'm sad about what we lost," I say finally. "But I'm not sad about what we're going to build next." My phone buzzes with a text from Bryce. "Custody hearing scheduled for Monday. Asset freeze is holding. Sabrina's attorney wants to negotiate." I text back. "No negotiations. Full compliance with prenup terms." She made her choices. Tomorrow brings new challenges, media interviews, client meetings, federal depositions that will help put corrupt cops in prison where they belong. But tonight, I'm sitting with my daughter in our wounded but healing home, eating pizza and planning a future that's finally completely ours. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's success, integrity, and the satisfaction of watching your enemies destroy themselves while you build something better. 3 weeks after the arrests, Pine Ridge starts feeling like home again instead of a crime scene. The news vans have moved on to whatever fresh disaster is currently bleeding leads. The federal agents have finished their evidence collection, and I've had our front door replaced with something that could probably withstand another tactical entry. Not that I'm expecting one. Mornings have become my favorite part of the day. Aria and I have developed a routine that feels more natural than anything Sabrina and I managed in 23 years of marriage. I make eggs and bacon while she sketches in her leather-bound journal, drinking coffee that's stronger than most adults can handle. We talk about her college applications, her art projects, and the occasional piece of gossip from Pine Ridge High that's actually more interesting than most Fortune 500 board meetings. "Dad, you know Jessica Chun from my AP art class?" Aria says, not looking up from her drawing. She's working on something abstract and complex, all flowing lines and hidden meanings that probably represent her processing the past month's trauma. Jessica Chun, Dr. Kim's daughter. I know Dr. Kim from our portfolio company board meetings. She's the CEO of one of our AI startups and sharp as a fucking scalpel. Yeah. She said her mom mentioned that Verdict IQ is getting written up in some major tech publication. I pull out my phone and show her the TechCrunch article that posted this morning. Legal AI startup Verdict IQ closes $50 million Series B after helping FBI crack corruption case. The piece includes quotes from federal prosecutors praising our machine learning compliance software and speculation about an IPO timeline. 50 million? Aria whistles softly. That's like a lot of money. It's enough to fund expansion into 15 new markets and hire about 200 engineers, I confirm. Plus, it validates our entire business model. Nothing sells legal tech like proven results in high-stakes federal investigations. The best part about the Series B isn't the money, though 50 million in venture capital funding never hurts. It's the quality of investors we attracted. Andreessen Horowitz led the round, with participation from Sequoia Capital and Google Ventures. These aren't just funding sources. They're strategic partners with portfolio companies that could become Verdict IQ clients. My phone rings with a call from Jennifer Park, Verdict IQ CEO. Logan, I wanted to give you a heads up before the press release goes out. The Department of Justice wants to license our anomaly detection system for a pilot program with federal prosecutors. I lean against our kitchen counter, still in my flannel pajama pants, because working from home has its privileges. What kind of pilot program? Discovery triage for white-collar prosecutions. They want to use our AI to identify patterns in financial records, communication logs, and evidence databases that might indicate prosecutorial misconduct or defense attorney shenanigans. This is bigger than I initially realized. Federal prosecutors don't pilot and proven technology unless they have serious confidence in its capabilities. The DOJ licensing deal could be worth tens of millions annually and position Verdict IQ as the gold standard for legal compliance AI. What's the timeline? I ask. 6-month pilot starting next quarter. If it works, they're talking about a 5-year contract with option years. Could be a $100 million engagement over the life of the deal. After Jennifer hangs up, I pour myself another cup of coffee and consider the irony. Detective Rourke's corruption scheme, which was supposed to destroy my business empire, has instead turned Verdict IQ into the most sought-after legal tech company in the country. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. The Tesla Model S Plaid handles Pine Ridge's mountain roads like it was designed for them, even though it probably costs more than most houses in town. Aria sits in the passenger seat with her portfolio spread across her lap, reviewing college application materials while I navigate the winding route to Denver for her art competition. The theme is resilient, she explains, showing me photos of her latest painting on her iPad. It's about surviving betrayal and coming out stronger. The painting is stunning, abstract but emotionally clear, with colors that shift from dark and turbulent at the bottom to bright and hopeful at the top. She's captured something essential about the past month's experience. The way crisis can either break you or forge you into something harder and more valuable. Think you'll win? I ask, downshifting as we approach a hairpin turn. I think I have something to say that other kids my age haven't experienced. She replies with the kind of confidence that reminds me she's been through more in 17 years than most people face in a lifetime. The Denver Art Institute's regional competition draws high school students from across the Rocky Mountain states. The venue is all exposed brick and industrial lighting, the kind of carefully curated aesthetic that signals serious artistic credibility. Aria's painting hangs next to works by teenagers who clearly have talent, but her piece commands attention in a way that makes other parents stop and stare. When they announce winners 2 hours later, Aria takes first place by unanimous decision. I clap too loud and don't give a damn who notices. The judges said my use of color progression to represent emotional transformation was sophisticated beyond my years, she tells me on the drive home, her gold medal catching light from the dashboard. They're right, I say. But more importantly, you created something meaningful out of a painful experience. That's what artists do. Evenings have become sacred time. While Aria works on college applications at the kitchen counter, I review contracts and financial statements in my home office, but I keep the door open so we can talk. It's a different kind of family dynamic than the one we had with Sabrina, less formal, more honest, built on actual communication instead of polite avoidance. The business side of my life is accelerating like a Tesla in ludicrous mode. Sheriff Pike has officially hired Mercer Risk and Capital to design and implement comprehensive reforms for Pine Ridge County law enforcement. The contract is worth $2 million over 3 years, but more importantly, it's the kind of high-profile government work that opens doors with other municipalities facing similar corruption challenges. My phone conference with the San Francisco Venture Capital Fund runs until almost midnight. They want me to co-lead Verdict IQ's next funding round, the bridge round before an eventual IPO that could value the company at over $1 billion. We're seeing explosive growth in demand for AI-powered compliance solutions, explains the partner from Founders Fund. Financial services, healthcare, legal services, every heavily regulated industry needs what you've built. I negotiate from my home office while wearing pajama pants and drinking whiskey that costs $400 a bottle. The terms we agree on give me significant influence over the company's strategic direction and board composition, plus equity options that could be worth $50 million if the IPO hits projected valuations. But the call that matters most comes at 7 p.m. from Area's guidance counselor at Pine Ridge High. Mr. Mercer, I wanted to update you on Area's college situation. Yale, Harvard, and Stanford have all expressed serious interest based on her portfolio and academic record. Yale, Harvard, Stanford, the kind of schools that open doors to any future she wants to build. What about financial aid? I ask, though between the portfolio performance and the recent business successes, college tuition isn't exactly a budget concern. With her academic achievements and the unique circumstances she's overcome, she's likely to receive merit scholarships. But honestly, Mr. Mercer, these schools want her more than she needs them. She's the kind of student who makes admissions officers look good. That night, Aria and I sit on our back deck with hot chocolate and watch stars that are actually visible now that the federal investigation's floodlights are gone. The silence is comfortable, the kind that comes from surviving something together and emerging stronger. Dad, she says quietly, are you happy? I consider the question while looking out at the continental divide. 3 weeks ago, I thought my marriage was solid, my business was stable, and my biggest worry was whether to approve another acquisition. Now my wife is facing federal charges, my house has been on national news, and my 17-year-old daughter is headed to Ivy League schools. I'm happier than I've been in years, I say honestly. We're building something real now, something that's actually ours. She nods and sketches something in her journal, probably the mountain silhouette, or maybe the way the starlight catches the snow on the peaks. What's next? She asks. Next, we keep building. You go to whatever college makes you happiest. I grow the businesses and maybe find someone who actually deserves to be part of this family. And we protect what matters. The future stretches ahead of us like an unwritten contract, full of possibilities and free of the lies that held us back. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a portfolio is getting rid of the underperforming assets. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a family is the same. Noel Hart arrives at my house on a Tuesday morning in November, driving a BMW X5 that's tasteful without being flashy, the kind of vehicle choice that signals success without screaming about it. She's Bryce Navarro's senior partner at Hart and Navarro LLP, and I've been hearing about her legendary courtroom skills for years. What I didn't expect was someone who could make a $1,000 Armani suit look effortless while carrying a briefcase that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Mr. Mercer, she says, extending a hand with the kind of firm grip that comes from years of negotiating with Fortune 500 CEOs and federal prosecutors. I'm here to finalize the divorce settlement and custody arrangements. Noel Hart is probably 45, with silver-streaked hair that she wears in a style that's professional without being severe. Her shoes are Louboutin. I recognize the red soles, but not the sky-high stilettos that scream, trying too hard. These are the kind of power heels that say, I can outthink you, outmaneuver you, and outwork you, and I'll look good doing it. We settle into my home office, where she spreads legal documents across my glass desk with the precision of a surgeon laying out instruments. The divorce papers are thick as a hostile takeover prospectus, and every page represents another nail in the coffin of my marriage to Sabrina. Your wife's attorneys are requesting a renegotiation of the asset division, Noelle explains, her voice carrying the kind of authority that probably makes opposing counsel break out in cold sweats. They're claiming the prenuptial agreement is unconscionable given the circumstances. I pour myself 2 fingers of Macallan 25 and offer her the same. She accepts, which I appreciate. Lawyers who drink good whiskey at 10 a.m. are either completely corrupt or completely competent, and given her reputation, I'm betting on the latter. What circumstances? I ask, though I suspect I know where this is going. They're arguing that Sabrina was manipulated by Detective Rourke, that she was essentially a victim of his criminal conspiracy rather than a willing participant. Noelle takes a sip of whiskey and smiles in a way that suggests she's about to destroy someone's day. It's a creative argument. Also complete bullshit. She opens her laptop and shows me a presentation that looks like the kind of investor pitch deck I use for series of funding rounds. Except instead of market opportunity and revenue projections, it's a comprehensive demolition of Sabrina's victim defense. Financial records show that your wife initiated contact with Detective Rourke, Noelle explains, clicking through slides that document the relationship timeline. She researched his background, his financial situation, his career trajectory. This wasn't a chance encounter, it was a targeted seduction. The evidence is damning. Credit card records showing Sabrina's purchases of expensive lingerie and perfume in the weeks before she first accidentally encountered Rourke at Murphy's Tavern. Hotel reservations made under her maiden name. Text messages recovered by federal investigators that show her discussing my asset portfolio and business relationships with disturbing accuracy. She wasn't a victim, I say, stating the obvious. She was conducting due diligence on a potential co-conspirator. Exactly. And the federal prosecutors agree. They're offering her a plea deal that includes cooperation against other corrupt officials in exchange for house arrest instead of federal prison. But the deal requires full restitution of any assets she helped Rourke attempt to steal. Noelle closes the laptop and looks at me directly. The prenuptial agreement holds. Your business assets, the venture portfolio, the real estate holdings, all protected. Sabrina gets exactly what she agreed to when she signed the contract. Her personal belongings, her car, and a one-time settlement payment of $50,000. $50,000. Less than I spend on wine in a good year. The irony is delicious. She tried to steal everything and ended up with pocket change. What about custody of Aria? Emergency, sole custody granted. Sabrina's criminal involvement makes her an unfit guardian under Colorado law. She'll get supervised visitation once she completes her federal sentence, assuming she stays clean and completes court-mandated counseling. We spend the next 2 hours reviewing documents, signing papers, and finalizing the legal framework that will protect Aria and our assets from any future schemes. Noelle's thoroughness is impressive. She's anticipated every possible appeal, every procedural challenge, every loophole that Sabrina's attorneys might try to exploit. You're very good at this, I tell her as we wrap up the paperwork. I should be. I charge $800 an hour. She smiles, and for the first time, it reaches her eyes. But this case was personal. I don't like seeing good fathers get screwed by corrupt systems and cheating wives. When Aria gets home from school, she finds us in the kitchen discussing the finer points of asset protection strategies while sharing a bottle of wine that costs more than most people's car payments. Noelle switches effortlessly from high-powered attorney to someone who actually listens when a 17-year-old talks about college applications and art projects. So you're the lawyer who's protecting dad from mom's bullshit? Aria asks with the directness that only teenagers can manage. I nearly choke on my wine, but Noelle just nods calmly. That's a fair assessment. Though I prefer to think of it as ensuring the legal system works the way it's supposed to. Good, Aria says, settling onto one of our leather bar stools with her sketchbook. Dad deserves someone who actually has his back for once. The conversation flows naturally from legal strategy to art theory to the kind of random topics that emerge when smart people share good wine and comfortable silence. Noelle asks thoughtful questions about Aria's paintings, offers insights about intellectual property law that could protect her artistic work, and doesn't treat her like a child who should be excluded from adult conversations. You went to Yale Law School, Aria observes, having apparently Googled Noelle while we were talking. What was that like? Competitive, expensive, And worth every penny, Noel replies. Though I probably learned more in my first year of practice than I did in 3 years of law school. Areas considering Yale for undergrad. I mention art and business double major, maybe a joint JD/MBA program eventually. Noel's eyebrows rise. Ambitious. I like it. The art world needs people who understand contracts, intellectual property, and business development. Too many talented artists get screwed because they don't understand the legal side of their careers. We order pizza because Arya insists that Italian food goes better with good wine than whatever gourmet nonsense I usually prepare. She's probably right. We eat off paper plates in the living room, surrounded by Arya's college brochures and legal documents, and it feels more like a family dinner than anything we managed during the Sabrina years. Can I ask you something? Arya says to Noel around a bite of pepperoni pizza. Why do you think Mom did it? The whole thing with detective asshole and trying to steal Dad's money. Noel considers the question with the same careful attention she probably gives to Supreme Court precedent. People convince themselves they deserve things they haven't earned. Your mother saw your father's success and decided she was entitled to it without the work, the risk, or the responsibility that built it. She takes a sip of wine and looks out at the mountains through our floor-to-ceiling windows. Plus, some people are addicted to drama. They create chaos because stability feels boring. That makes sense, Arya says thoughtfully. Mom always said Dad was boring, but I think she meant he was reliable. Reliable is underrated, Noel agrees. Especially when you're building something that matters. As evening settles over Pine Ridge, Noel and I walk the ridge trail behind our house, while Arya works on college essays in her room. The conversation shifts from legal strategy to broader topics. Ethics, governance, the challenge of maintaining integrity in systems designed to reward corruption. You built something impressive here, she says, gesturing at the house and the view beyond. The business empire, the family stability, the community connections. That's not luck. That's vision and execution. I had good models, I reply. Military training teaches you to plan for contingencies. Corporate experience teaches you to protect your assets. Fatherhood teaches you what's actually worth protecting. We reach the overlook where I used to come during the worst days of discovering Sabrina's betrayal, when I needed space to think and plan my response. Now it feels different, less like a strategic position and more like a place where you can see possibilities. The custody arrangement is solid, Noel says, leaning against the wooden railing. Sabrina's attorneys can file appeals, but criminal conspiracy trumps marital disputes every time. Area's safe, your assets are protected, and you're free to build whatever comes next. What comes next? I ask. She looks at me with the kind of direct assessment that probably makes corporate defendants confess to securities fraud. That depends on what you want to build and who you want to build it with. The question hangs in the mountain air like a challenge or an invitation. For the first time in months, I'm not thinking about asset protection or litigation strategy or the next board meeting. I'm thinking about possibilities that don't involve betrayal or corruption or the kind of careful defensive planning that's dominated my life since discovering my marriage was a fraud. I want to build something real, I say finally. Something that's actually worth protecting. She nods like that's the answer she expected. Then that's what we'll do. 6 months later, Pine Ridge's town square looks like a scene from a Norman Rockwell painting. If Norman Rockwell had painted small Colorado mountain towns with Tesla charging stations and artisanal coffee shops. The mayor, a decent man who runs a sustainable accounting firm and actually pays his taxes, stands behind a podium decorated with red, white, and blue bunting that probably came from the same supplier who outfitted the last 3 presidential campaigns. The crowd is typically Pine Ridge. Ranchers and clean wranglers, tech workers who moved here during the pandemic, retirees who came for the mountain views and stayed for the property taxes. About 200 people, which in a town of 4,000 constitutes a major civic event. I'm wearing my dress blue uniform because some occasions demand the formal recognition of service, sacrifice, and the difference between those who protect society and those who exploit it. The fabric feels familiar and strange at the same time. I haven't worn these ribbons and medals since the Veterans Day ceremony, where Sabrina spit on them. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Peterson announces, his voice carrying across the square through speakers that probably cost more than Detective Rourke's entire annual salary when he was stealing from taxpayers. We're here today to honor someone who exemplifies the courage and integrity our community values. Noelle stands at my right, wearing a navy blue suit that probably costs more than most people's mortgage payments but looks effortless and elegant rather than ostentatious. Aria squeezes my left hand, her grip firm and proud. She's wearing the Yale acceptance letter like a badge of honor, even though she hasn't officially announced her college choice yet. The medal ceremony is mercifully brief. Small-town politicians understand that attention spans are limited and gratitude is best expressed concisely. Mayor Peterson pins a civic medal on my lapel, while photographers from the local paper document the moment for posterity and the Pine Ridge Gazette's website. Logan Mercer represents the best of American values, Peterson says, reading from notes that someone probably wrote on good paper with expensive ink. Military service, entrepreneurial success, and the moral courage to stand against corruption even when it threatened his personal interests. I accept the medal graciously, though the real recognition came 6 months ago when federal prosecutors sent Detective Rourke to prison for 15 years and Sabrina to house arrest pending her cooperation in ongoing corruption investigations. Justice isn't always poetic, but it's usually sufficient. During my brief remarks, I talk about loyalty, integrity, and the importance of building institutions that serve communities rather than exploiting them. I mentioned the new compliance protocols we've implemented for Pine Ridge County law enforcement, the AI monitoring systems that flag evidence tampering before it can contaminate prosecutions, and the importance of transparency in governance. A community is only as strong as the trust between its citizens and institutions. I tell the crowd, speaking without notes because the message is simple enough to remember. When that trust is betrayed, it's everyone's responsibility to demand accountability and rebuild better systems. The applause is genuine and sustained. These are people who lived through the scandal, watched their local law enforcement get exposed as corrupt, and appreciated seeing someone fight back effectively without burning down the entire system. At the edge of the crowd, barely visible behind the local reporters and civic boosters, Sabrina watches the ceremony. She's wearing civilian clothes, jeans, sweater, the kind of outfit normal people wear to community events. The designer dresses and expensive jewelry are gone, probably sold to pay legal fees or seized as part of her restitution agreement. She looks smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of choices that seemed clever at the time. House arrest, federal probation, and the knowledge that her conspiracy with Rourke accomplished nothing except destroying her marriage and exposing her as a criminal. I don't stare. Some chapters end without dramatic confrontations or final revelations. Sometimes justice is just watching people live with the consequences of their decisions while you build something better. After the handshakes and photos, we walk back to our house, Noelle, Aria, and me. The afternoon is crisp and clear, with that particular Rocky Mountain light that makes everything look like it's been professionally photographed. "What's next, Dad?" Aria asks, the same question she's been asking since that night 6 months ago when federal agents cleaned the corruption out of our lives. "Next," I say, "we keep building. You head to New Haven in the fall and become the kind of artist who changes how people see the world. I expand Verdict IQ into new markets and maybe run for the county commission to make sure our local government stays clean. And maybe," I look at Noelle, who's walking beside us with the comfortable confidence of someone who belongs here. "We figure out what a real partnership looks like." Noelle smiles, the kind of expression that suggests she's already thinking about compliance frameworks and governance structures that could make Pine Ridge a model for small-town democracy. "Sounds like a plan worth executing," she says. We reach our front porch, the same porch where I sat 6 months ago, surrounded by the wreckage of a marriage I thought was solid and a life I thought was secure. The house looks the same from the outside, but everything inside has been rebuilt on honest foundations. Aria disappears into the kitchen to start dinner preparations, probably something involving organic vegetables and locally sourced proteins that cost 3 times what normal food costs, but taste like actual nutrition instead of processed convenience. Noelle and I settle into chairs on the deck overlooking the Continental Divide, sharing a glass of wine that costs more than Detective Rourke's daily salary back when he had a salary. "Any regrets?" she asks. I consider the question while watching the sun paint the mountains in shades of gold and copper. 6 months ago, I thought I was living a successful life built on solid foundations. Turned out the foundations were rotten, and the success was built on lies I didn't recognize. Now I have a daughter heading to an Ivy League university, a business empire that's stronger than ever, and a woman beside me who chose to be here based on who I actually am rather than what I could provide. No regrets, I say finally. Just gratitude for the chance to build something real. The mountains hold up the sky, the house breathes with honest air, and the future stretches ahead like an unsigned contract full of possibilities we'll negotiate together. Sometimes the best thing that happens to a portfolio is getting rid of the underperforming assets. Sometimes the best thing that happens to a life is exactly the same.